You are driving down the highway and a brand new truck pulls in front of you. Chrome everywhere, lifted higher than it needs to be. Probably costs more than some houses did not that long ago. And then you start wondering something strange. How is that possible? Because you know something about money now. You know what groceries cost, you know what rent costs, you know what insurance costs. So how are regular people driving vehicles with payments that look mathematically impossible? Here's the part nobody says out loud. Most of them are not affording it. They are surviving it. Because modern car buying is not really about price anymore. It's about whether you can survive the monthly number. And once the decision moves to the monthly number, the trap is already set. A car used to be a purchase. Now it is a structure. It looks like a simple decision. You need transportation. You want something reliable. You want something newer. You want fewer problems. That sounds rational. Most people do not walk into a dealership trying to damage their future. They walk in trying to reduce friction in daily life. A newer car feels safer. A nicer car feels more stable. A larger vehicle feels more useful. The choice looks practical. The trap starts there. This is what makes the system work. It does not need people to be reckless. It only needs them to think in monthly numbers. Once the decision moves from total cost to monthly affordability, the structure changes completely. A vehicle that looks too expensive at full price suddenly feels reachable when spread across 6 or 7 years. The number shrinks, the obligation expands. That is the hidden exchange. For most people, the car is not bought with cash. It is translated into time. Price becomes term. Term becomes permission. Permission becomes commitment. A person who would never agree to $70,000 may agree to $800 a month, not because the truck became cheaper, because the system changed the unit of pain. It moved attention away from cost and toward tolerability. That is how the boundary disappears. This is why extreme car prices now reach regular households, not because incomes exploded, not because most people became wealthy. Financing stretched the decision until it stopped feeling extreme. A larger payment over a shorter period feels impossible. A smaller payment over most of a decade feels manageable for a moment. That is enough. Once the signature happens, the structure takes over. Longer loan terms are one of the quietest ways modern money systems create lock-in. They reduce resistance at the front end and increase dependency on the back end. The buyer experiences relief. The system gains duration. What looks like flexibility is usually delayed pressure, lower payment, longer control. And the car is not the only thing inside the payment. Insurance rises with value. Repairs hit at the wrong time. Fuel rises with size. Tires cost more. Brakes cost more. Every surrounding expense expands with the vehicle, but the emotional decision is usually made before that full ecosystem is felt. People do not just buy a car, they buy a cost environment. That environment follows them every month. This is where the trap deepens. Once a person builds their budget around a large car payment, everything else has to compress around it. They don't always notice it at first. They just start absorbing pressure in smaller ways. They postpone travel. They delay replacing other things. They slow down savings. They carry credit balances longer. They become more careful about job changes. They stop thinking in terms of freedom and start thinking in terms of coverage. Can I keep this paid? That question starts organizing the month. This is not only a money issue, it becomes a flexibility issue. A high fixed payment changes how much risk a person can absorb. Suddenly, a bad job is harder to leave. A lower paying opportunity becomes less possible. A relocation becomes more complicated. Even a temporary disruption feels more dangerous. The car did not just improve transportation, it reduced room to move. Fewer exits. That is the part people rarely talk about. The car payment is not only expensive, it changes behavior. It teaches the person to protect the payment. Once a large monthly obligation becomes normal, other decisions begin serving it. The person starts structuring life around preserving cash flow.
That might mean staying in a draining job. It might mean taking extra shifts. It might mean carrying other debt just to avoid falling behind. The car begins acting like a private system of compliance. Dealerships do not need to explain this. The sales process is already built around it. The conversation usually centers on one question: what monthly payment are you trying to stay under? That sounds helpful. It sounds like budgeting, but it quietly removes the most important question: what is this going to cost over time? Once the buyer answers with a monthly target, the system gains a way to rearrange everything else. Longer term, different rate, rolled fees, trade-in balances moved forward. The payment can be made to fit. The structure underneath can still become worse. That is why people often leave feeling like they won. The payment landed near their target, the vehicle looks better than expected. The dealership found a way to make it work. But make it work is one of the most dangerous phrases in modern finance. It usually means the system found more years to sell. Negative equity is where the trap becomes visible. Cars lose value fast. Loans don't shrink fast enough to match. After a few years, many people owe more than the car is worth. That gap matters. It means the person is not free to leave cleanly. Selling may require cash they don't have. Trading may mean rolling the leftover balance forward. The old car stays inside the new payment. The past follows forward. This creates a strange kind of motion. A person keeps upgrading the vehicle while carrying debt from the previous one. The car changes, the obligation survives. Sometimes it grows. Because the monthly number can still be adjusted, the cycle does not always feel like collapse. It feels like continuation. New car, same trap. Status makes this system stronger. Cars are one of the few major purchases people use publicly every day. That matters. A house is private. Investments are invisible. Savings do not announce themselves in traffic, but a vehicle does. It becomes easy to attach meaning to it. Success, adulthood, reward, competence, arrival. Once that happens, reducing the vehicle can feel like reducing the self. That emotional link protects the payment from rational analysis. The system benefits from that confusion. If the car represents identity, then criticism of the cost feels personal. If the truck signals hard work, then driving something cheaper can feel like losing status. If the SUV signals good parenting, then cutting back can feel irresponsible. The decision becomes harder to question because it no longer feels mechanical, it feels moral. That is powerful and useful to the system. Meanwhile, the actual trade-off keeps widening. Large transportation costs can consume money that could have built reserves or reduced stress. Emergency savings stay thin, career choices narrow, family budgets tighten. Because the pressure is spread across years, it rarely lands as one dramatic event. It shows up as chronic limitation. Less margin, less choice, less room. That is the hidden rule. A large recurring payment does not just take money, it reorganizes behavior. And the car payment is one of the easiest payments to justify because it hides inside necessity. People tell themselves they need reliability, they need safety, they need something decent. All of that can be true, but the system quietly slides from reliable transportation into financed identity. Somewhere in that movement, the budget stops serving the person and starts serving the vehicle. What makes this especially dangerous is that car payments rarely stay isolated. One large payment normalizes the next, then maybe a second car enters the household. Insurance climbs, repairs hit at the wrong time, credit fills the gaps. Now the household is not dealing with one expensive decision, it's managing a transportation system that keeps demanding cash. Because each piece seemed reasonable alone, the full structure often goes unnoticed until flexibility is already gone. The trap is not that people buy cars. The trap is that monthly affordability has replaced total cost thinking across modern life. The same logic appears in subscriptions, phones, housing, and software. But the car payment is one of the strongest versions because it combines necessity, emotion, status, and financing into one recurring obligation. It looks useful. It behaves like compression. So when you see someone driving a vehicle that looks impossible to afford, the real question is usually not how they bought it. The real question is what had to narrow so the payment could survive. Maybe it was savings. Maybe it was mobility. Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was the ability to walk away later. That's how the trap works. It does not block the purchase. It makes the purchase feel possible. Then it collects the cost slowly, through reduced freedom, longer dependency, and years of future cash flow already spoken for. And once a payment starts deciding what you can no longer do, it is no longer just a car.